Hello to another um, recording of the Hi-Fi Man. Today we're going to talk about amplifiers. Now, people often ask us, shouldn't I retain my older, more vintage amp? I like the sound of it. Or should I move to a more modern amp? And most people who want to get into this hobby sometimes find it easier to buy an older amp because it's much cheaper. And there's no easy answer to this, but if you find a good vintage amp, it could do the trick too if it is nicely maintained. But how do you know if it is nicely maintained? But that is another topic for another day. Okay, long story short, getting a nice vintage amp could save you a lot of bucks, which you can then reinvest in some other equipment for yourself, which will support to give you better sound. And also depends on what kind of voicing you want. See, the stuff prior to 2010 and even beyond, even before that, was all voiced a bit differently. Today we are seeing that the modern amps are voiced a lot more different. The earlier amps were voiced to be more musical, more mid-range focused. We had turntables and record players which were mostly being used for playback. So most of the older amps might not give you that thump. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It's a bit of a hit and miss, but there's a different texture to the voicing of the amps. Some prefer those, some prefer the more modern, very high definition amps where you get a lot more clarity, where you can get lots more details. So it depends on what floats your boat. Now I'll show you three amps over here. We have the Musical Fidelity M6SI, which is a perfect blend of modern as well as vintage. Then we have the Vincent. Don't turn it around. Then we have the Vincent, which is again a very differently voiced amp. It's a hybrid amp. It's got a little tube here. Let me see if it'll come on. Yeah, so you can see the tube. This got a different voicing. Okay, and then we have this wall vamp over here, which is a Unison Research wall vamp, which has a very modern vintage sound when it comes to tubes. All right, and we have this amp, which is the Musical Fidelity A3 dual mono integrated amplifier. This was built around 2010 or maybe a little earlier, and this is a perfect example of when a vintage amp not only is built to last a generation or two, but also sounds spectacular. Okay, now many of the people ask us, what is dual mono? Now dual mono means they've got a separate set of electronics and a power supply and a toroidal transformer for the left and another one for the right. So there is no interchannel modulation or distortion. IMDs are very low. It sounds pristine, perfect, this kind of an amp. This one is voiced beautifully like most Musical Fidelity amps. And it's got a very high current and it delivers 85 watts, but when you put it on, it sounds a lot more than 85 watts. So it seems to have been very conservatively rated. Now if you get an amp like this, go for it. And if it is in good condition, definitely go for it. And if you get it at the right price, 2 thumbs up.